Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. Selection Sunday is finally here. Nicole, we've only been talking about this for literal weeks.
I mean, I feel like I've been talking about it every single day for the past few months. My top 8 constantly changing, everything about it. I'm ready. I have this load on my chest that I need to spew some softball right now. Like I need a word vomited out.
You need to unload it, and we are going to do exactly that. We both have been saying that parity this year feels on a different level. And even though we were on the phone call earlier, we both have been changing our top 8 till the very last second. We're going to see it live together on 7 Eastern with all of you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. But until then, I'm dying to know. Let's start with the top 4. Give me your top 4. I'll give you my top 4, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so you and I were talking before we hopped on the live, and I was telling you my top 4 were solid. So I don't know, because there's a ESPN top 8 of what the bracket is, and then there's the top 8 of like what I feel like should happen. This is my top 4 is I feel like should happen. Will it? I don't know, but my top 4 is Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 2, Tennessee at 3, and then OSU at 4, Oklahoma State. I felt pretty solid about those 4. Have Did you change up your top 4, or was it your bottom 4 that you were like kind of switching around?
I changed up my top 4. And
Ooh,
I know we
damn.
have we have the first 3 the same, but then 4, I think I'm really gonna throw you for a loop. After this past weekend, I now have Florida.
Okay. Florida at 4.
Mhm. Florida at 4.
You did take me for a little bit of a loop there, but I think we should roll into our bottom 4. My
Yes.
5, 6, 7, 8. I have Florida at 5, UCLA at 6, Duke at 7, and Missouri at 8.
Oh gosh, okay. I love that we're different. I love that we're different because that just shows how close these teams are.
I were switching teams in and out. I I honestly like I still like ask me in 5 minutes and I might change my answer. I don't know. It is so hard this year. What are your bottom 4 for the top 8?
So after Florida at 4, I go LSU, Stanford, Duke, and then I have UCLA just making it in with Missouri being on the bubble along with OSU, which feels so hard to say because Missouri finishes in the top 8 in like every category. But when you look at OSU, their RPI is right around 10, and I don't know. Again, they wouldn't surprise me if they were to pop up, but I think just you have like 10 teams who really all could make a case for why they should be top 8
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is like I'm nervous. I did you ever get nervous
all
whenever
the time.
the selection show came up? Like were you just like, "Oh my gosh, like where are we going to go?" Like I
Yeah.
was like now whenever I watch softball, I get crazy nervous for situations versus whenever I was playing, I was like I'm so nervous for the show. It's going to be so crazy. Uh
Well, it goes down to like you can't do anything about it. I feel like as a player, once the selection goes and we get a hi Nicole, hashtag Team Mexico. I love that.
hey, I love that.
But
We love Team Mexico.
as a player, we love Team Mexico. And we also love Team Great Britain. Shout out Tara, who's doing her magic behind the scenes. As a player, it feels like you do everything that you can on the field, but when you hop on the selection show, it's like the one moment that you can't control. It doesn't matter how hard you work, like your resume speaks for itself. And what I think is so interesting is that every year the committee is picking something different to look at, whether it's RPI, strength of schedule, top 10 wins. We saw that a ton last year, which ultimately brought Alabama up, who's another hot topic right now, if they're in the top 16 or not. I mean, there's so many teams. Texas State, are they going to host? so many bubble teams. I think not only in the top 8, but at the top 16. Is there anyone you think who's gonna really surprise some people by landing in the top 16 tonight?
Oh my gosh, that's like the worst question you could ask, but the best question because I literally on my phone, I have like all my notes of okay, here's the pros of this team, here's the cons of this team.
Mhm.
Um, I I was talking with some friends earlier in the week about the top 25 and just what what do we think the committee is going to be looking at this year? Because earlier in the year, everybody's saying, "Oh, it's going to be the RPI, it's going to be the RPI," and then it felt like there was 2 or 3 weeks in a row where all the top 25 teams lost, especially like the top 10. They lost some big time games, and then they're saying, "Okay, well maybe it won't be RPI, maybe it'll be strength of schedule," and then you're having top teams who are doing great and have only had a couple losses, but their strength of schedule maybe hasn't been the worst, but there's teams that have really tough strength of schedules, but they've lost quite a few games. And so it's like
Mhm.
where do you find that balance? So for me, if I had to look at okay, like top 25, who's going to fall within the top 16? I would love to see A&M host. I would love to
Mhm.
see I don't know if they will. Um and then I would love to see Louisiana host. That's one that I
Yes.
think should, but I don't know if they will, especially with LSU being right there in their backyard. And then you have the addition of the teams in a close nearby region who are also probably guaranteed to host as well. It's like how, as a committee, there's rules and stuff that go beyond okay, are they a top team or not? It's commute. Is there enough accommodation
Mhm.
for those teams to be able to even host and a whole other host of behind the scenes things.
And because of that reason, we're gonna see some nasty talented number 2 seeds is what I think is this could be the year where we see 2, 3, 4 really be able to make a statement against the 1 seeds. I mean, if you were to look at the numbers right now, I think Washington's gonna be a 2 seed. You know, you look at Clemson's not gonna be a top seed. Arizona, we'll see if they host, but I think they could be a 2 seed. You know, it's these teams who are still competing against the best of the best, and we've seen on their resume that they've taken down top 5 caliber teams. Now they're coming in as a 2 seed. You're not gonna feel safe just because you're hosting a regional where in the past it's like, "Okay, we're hosting, we're good. We can get by round 1, and then supers is where we're gonna face a lot of competition." Long gone are those days. You're
Oh,
gonna have to work and really try to stay in that winners bracket so then you don't have to come around and beat that 2, 3, or whatever seed twice on the last day. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And for any team who's going to be a 2 seed who I think's on that bubble, not only are you mad you're going to come in hungrier, but I think you can't even let it get to you in a bit because I think everybody knows there's going to be a handful of 2 seeds that walk away into super regionals this year.
who do you think is going to be a regional that hosts that you might not traditionally expect? Because I do think we'll see
Oh,
that. We talked about there's the teams that I feel like host year in and year out, and you kind of come to expect them to host. Do you think there will be any teams that don't traditionally get to host that will this year?
you know, I love that you brought up Texas A&M and M and Louisiana because those are kind of my 2 as well. I feel like and from there, it gets really interesting. I think Arkansas has a good shot at it. I would say those are my closest 2, but I think we've also seen teams who haven't given the resume. I think you're seeing UCLA step up right now, you're seeing Florida step up right now. So I think teams not only the ones who I feel like are 8 through 16 are all kind of together, but certain teams are starting to really separate themselves in the top 8.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think what's crazy is the fact that for the first time ever, when you look at who our top few seeds are gonna be, you have Texas who has 6 losses, Oklahoma who has 6 losses. I mean, we haven't seen that type of again, goes back to the parity, and I wanna know of being a former Oklahoma player, that program is used to being number 1 time and time again. you're around those girls a lot. Has there been kind of a change in attitude with going into today? I think most people are expecting them to not be at number one and how that looks for them being different.
I think that the resume, I think they're fantastic. And I think they figured something out whenever I saw them play at the Big 12 tournament. They figured something out. And you could tell the way that they came out, they were aggressive in the box, they were aggressive on the mound, aggressive base running. You saw them push the limits. But I do think some of the losses that they had earlier in the year, they unfortunately hurt them. Now, do I think at the end of the day, will it matter? No. As long as you're in the top 8, you're in a pretty good spot, because if you win your whole way through, you can get to a supers. Um, so I do think that if Oklahoma gets number 2, they will have a little bit of, man, I haven't felt this in a while. This is a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. It's a bad taste in my mouth. And they're going to come out again extra hungry, the way that you saw them come out to the Big 12 tournament. They didn't win the Big 12 regular season, and they had a chip on their shoulder, and they performed to another level. They went up all the more, right? And I'm, again, maybe a little biased, but I do think that the Big 12 this year is so, so good, and not just the top teams like your Texas and Oklahoma's. Oklahoma State. Now, I will say this was way earlier on in the season. They did run rule UCLA. They did run rule Florida. That was earlier in the season before those two teams figured out their stuff. But I do think Oklahoma State is a top contender. And I would say teams like UCF, teams like Baylor, teams like BYU, they might not have quite the exposure that maybe, say, like a team in SEC has. So they might not get quite that credit. But playing against 3 of the top teams in the country makes you better prepared as you go into postseason. So I think that as you start to see the bracket being formed, you're going to see teams like that, like you were saying, the 2 seeds, the 3 seeds, where you're just like, man, like that's a bracket that I don't want to be in. That's a regional that I don't want to be in.
And then you have the Big 12. How I look at it this year is they're going to become a little bit like SEC, where you start to get how many teams within the conference who might have not even finished above 500 in their conference. As you were to look at the Big 12 resume, you have Texas at top, who finished at 23-4, Oklahoma at 22-5, Oklahoma State 21-6, but then it's Baylor at 14-13, and then other talented teams who all finish below 500. We see that with SEC all the time as they get 3/4 of their conference in, and a lot of them didn't have great records in the SEC. And it's like you mentioned, it's because they're facing that top tier competition time in and time out. And if you're a part of that conference, you love it. Other conferences, they hate it. You look at Big Ten, they're going to fight to get 3, maybe 4 teams in. ACC, you have a lot of strong teams at the top, but that middle pack, you're going to see teams like Notre Dame and Louisville who might not be in it for the first time in years.
Yeah. And again, I do think that speaks to the parity of the sport. So pushing aside the Power Five for a moment, talking about what's going on with the mid majors this year. I mean, we're seeing a lot of mid majors. We're going to have one on later on in the show with Texas State, but you have Boston, you have Miami, Ohio, you have Louisiana. Like, there's so many teams that are so good that are not just fighting for a chance at hosting a regional, but if they don't get it, they're going to pose a very, very serious threat. And they deserve to be in it. They've made their resume, like you said, like once you're in the selection show, you can't do anything, right? You're just like sitting there. You're like, please let it be enough, right?
Yeah.
But they've made their resume impressive enough that they have to at least be strongly, strongly considered.
And I'm glad you mentioned Miami of Ohio, because for anyone tuning in, we are going to be having our live reactions to the selection show that's about to start in just a minute here. But we're also going to have interviews from players and coaches from Texas, Texas State, Miami of Ohio, Duke, Michigan, LSU, and Oklahoma State. I mean, Nicole, we're pumped. I don't think you can get much better of a lineup than that.
I'm excited. We're gonna get teams from all over the country, um, all different conferences. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a great conversation. Plus, being able to see the reactions, I think that's one of my favorite things. Whether it's a good reaction, whether it's a bad one, I love to see the reactions. I love softball tea, so that is what Selection Sunday is to me. Um, so I'm just really excited to see how all this plays out.
And it's 7 o'clock, so we are going to turn on our TVs to be able to watch it. Again, stay with us, and we're going to have live interviews. I have to say, talking about softball tea, I don't know about you, but it was like as soon as your team was picked, you were in the cameras were off. You were able to get so real with your teammates about the actual reactions from the other teams and completely let loose
Oh
because
yeah.
you're like, the camera is not on me.
You're like, did you see what she just did? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It's
And
my
it's
favorite is whenever they show not just the person who's hosting, but the teams are there. Because whenever you see the teams that
oh
are
yeah.
there, there's always a storyline. There's at least like two or three storylines in postseason, right? And so there's going to be a
Hmm.
regional with the storyline, and everybody, even if that team doesn't react, your team's watching, you're going, ooh, you know that's for the storyline. You know that's for the plot, for sure. So those are always fun to watch out for, too.
And you have to stay on your game because even when your team is called, until that regional is over, they can come back to you. And we talk about how good the twos and threes are. It's exposed a lot of people in the past when they find about who's coming into their hometown. And it could be really interesting here tonight. And things are getting started. I mean, gosh, even watching this intro video, like I'm getting hyped for postseason right now.
Well, while we're waiting for the intro to get through, I'm calling this from Dallas. Sid, you're from New York. Where's everybody else tuning in from? I am so curious. I love seeing how the sport brings everybody together, how people are like wanting to watch from literally all corners of the US, sometimes internationally. It's pretty cool.
I mean, it's amazing. For anyone who don't know, I graduated yesterday, and I can literally say that I think I missed the entire commencement speech because I was too busy watching the championship series. So we live and breathe
It's
softball over
graduation.
here.
Who needs graduation? Not you.
Who needs it?
Uh, Teresa said Wheaton, Illinois. I love that. California from Kevin. Got a little bit of Midwest in you, don't you, Sid?
Oh, absolutely. Born and raised in Wisconsin, Northwestern. That's going to be a really interesting one. Another two seed that I'm curious to see where we fall. I'm predicting Missouri. We saw a few where they were against the 1 and 2 seeds, so that could be really interesting for them. They won the Big Ten 3 regular times, but like we were saying, not just because you won the regular season, a lot of different teams won the tournament, which is really going to shake up the rankings as well.
Okay, I won't lie. I'm trying to put this on and I can't find it.
So I
Where
will be
is
giving
it?
everybody and Nicole live updates. ESPN2. For anyone who doesn't know, stay tuned with us and then turn on ESPN2.
I think I just found it. I found it. I'm good. I'm here. I'm
Florida
good.
Sooners fan.
DJ.
I will
Okay.
say,
Florida.
Oklahoma, you guys pull fans from all over the country. I mean, it is amazing. And I guess we should also take a moment of what a regular season it has been for softball. I mean, I got to visit you at Oklahoma to see the new stadium. We both have went to so many different stadiums, and the level of fans and commitments and crowds we've seen this year has to
Yeah.
top every other year.
I feel like every time you're seeing somebody go, okay, new record, new regular season attendance record. Like it just continues to impress and go and go and go. We got a couple of Michigan fans in here. Sean from Clawson, Michigan, go blue.
Hey, we are going to have a very special Michigan guest, and I have to say, Michigan is playing their best softball right now. There's a reason why this team went away with 4, which was the most players in Big Ten first team. But you look at Lauren Darkowski. I mean, put the team on her back, pitched 19 innings, well over 340 pitches. This is a team that's clicking in the right ways. And under head coach Bonnie Thole, now in her second season, mean, she's starting to put together an impressive resume, and I think she's been a long-time assistant coach, but really figuring out what it means to be the head leader of this team.
I mean, it's a totally different feel and role that you have to have. And you're starting to recruit not just for what your former coach wants, but what you want individually.
So, Nicole,
Okay.
I'm not sure if you got it pulled up. We have Texas. No, I don't think anyone was doubting that. I mean, what Mike White has done at Texas, you talk about he won at Oregon, but really has brought together just this championship program. They're going to have Siena Saints with their conference championship is going to go into their series. But this Texas team, I mean, you've gotten to see them play. They are lethal. They lead the Big 12, not only their team's batting average, but also the staff ERA.
Oh my gosh. They're solid. And some people might not agree. Some people might, but the run that they put together this season, not only in
Hold up.
preseason, but in conference, solid.
Did you see Northwestern?
And there's the
No
reaction right
way.
there. There's the reaction right there that we've been waiting for.
I
Okay,
told you
Sid,
when
what
I
do you
saw
think?
this. Wow.
What do you
First
think?
of all, let me get my thoughts out. I'm processing. I think this placement comes down to the fact that Northwestern is now the 2 seed up against Texas. One, they started to climb the ladders a lot in the RPI when they won the regular season for the 3rd time in a row, but having such an early exit ended up being their Achilles heel, where I feel like dropped them down and then sent them to Texas. But it's also a team that can make a lot of noise. You have Ashley Miller, who leads the Big Ten in ERA, Kansas Robinson, Kelsey Nader. It's a scrappy team who Kate Drohan, even though she was named Big Ten Coach of the Year, again, what she's done this year with a young team, 8 new faces. It'll be fun to watch. But your Oklahoma Sooners are now on the board as the 2 seed. Cleveland State's coming in.
Yeah, Oklahoma 49-6. I think everybody kind of knew it was going to be either Oklahoma at 1, Texas at 2, Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 2. So it's no surprise there that these two are at the top. I'm a little surprised by Boston University, though. I won't lie.
That's a good
Surprised that it
team.
got sent to Oklahoma. That's what I'm saying. They are a very high quality team. One who I thought would fall into maybe the regional of like a 15, a 12 seed, something like that. I wasn't quite expecting them to have to go to a regional. And of course, Oregon. Oregon, that is crazy.
The storylines. Can we talk about Lombardi coming back to Oklahoma? ESPN, I'm not going to say you're scripted, but I mean, the storylines do not lie.
I do have to say it's not just Lombardi though. Lombardi was a pitching coach there for forever, but you have Sidney Romero there, you have Sam Martyr there. Both of them Sid played and coached at Oklahoma. Sam Martyr coached at Oklahoma. That is a very, very much a storyline pivot, but also Oregon, they didn't perform quite as well as they probably expected to in the pack, and like you said with Northwestern. I think that might have pushed them down a little bit. All right, Tennessee.
Well, so far, 1 through 3, we're doing all right, but the next one is where it gets interesting. Oh my goodness. So Dane, I have to ask really quickly, because you said Oklahoma, they have Patty Gasso, who she's hosting it. Did she host it every year for you? What's it like being in her household for the selection show?
Oh, I mean, it's always very relaxed. It's very chill. It's in a week and a season of May of everything being crazy and stressful. It's very much something that she wants the team to go, okay, we're relaxed. Okay, Miami, Ohio. What do you think about that?
With Tennessee, I mean, their bats, not only Carly Spade, but they have home run hitters all the way 1 through 9. It's a reason why they're some of the toughest offenses in the lineup. But they're going to have to go through, and Virginia. I mean, talk about 2 powerhouse offensive, but you're going against 2 of the best pitchers in Tennessee. This is a regional I am now circling. I cannot wait to tune in.
Yeah.
I think both of these teams could give Tennessee a tough game. That's all I'm going to say. It's a tough game because I also think Tennessee is unbelievable this year, but anything could happen with good offense.
I agree. I think Tennessee, they have a great pitching staff, and that is what has put them so high up. Not that they don't have great offense, they do, but it's really their pitching staff that sets them above and beyond other teams. But whenever you're facing teams like Virginia, teams like Miami, Ohio, you got to double check. You got to look at that.
So we have Florida at number 4. I mean,
hey, Sid.
I'm not gonna say I told you so, but here we are, and I want to tell everybody too to stay tuned with us because soon we have Miami of Ohio who will be coming on, so that will be really fun to get their live reaction. You see, Florida Gulf Coast, I was able to go down there to cover them earlier this year with Supple America, and they have some really talented athletes as well, especially in the pitching circle, as they just won their conference. So you never know. You have a lot of in-state rivalry matchups within this regional already.
Yeah, and a lot of familiarity within it as well. You have Florida Atlantic. These teams, they face up against Florida a lot of times on midweeks, those kinds of things. So, I mean, it's close by.
I mean, the reaction for South Alabama, that might have to be my favorite. I don't believe in the act like you've been there before. Celebrate every single time.
Yeah.
Florida, they're a team who has really come up, especially within these last few weeks. I mean, I look at them offensively, defensively, in the circle. It feels like they have every single part of their game working for them.
They really do. And I think with them, it's been so high, so low, being able to be consistent this last half of conference season into the tournament, that's what really pushed them over the edge.
Oklahoma State at number 5. That is one that you called. I had them as a bubble, but I mean, their resume within Lexi Kilfoyle and Ivy, who we might talk to later, again, another top tier arms in the circle.
Yeah. I'm already like, oh, this is gonna be such a fun postseason because I'm already like looking at the teams that are on there, looking at the matchups that are gonna be coming out of this, and it's gonna be tough. I mean, Oklahoma State and Michigan. All right, it's gonna be a really good regional.
Now adding in Michigan to the mix, we talked about it, but Lauren Durkowski, and now add Kentucky. My goodness, I mean, these regionals are all just feel so stacked. This feels like one of the most competitive ones, along with Tennessee right now. I would say these two, you have talented teams, and the battle it's going to be between a Kentucky and a Michigan to, if Oklahoma State is able to stay up on it, could be really, really good games.
Yeah, but we actually have a guest right now.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
y'all. How are you guys
Hi,
feeling?
congratulations.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Good.
Yeah, great. Knowing that we were in was makes it easier to watch.
Yeah. You guys, Sid and I were talking leading up to this, and how being able to have the confidence of, okay, I'm gonna be in. It definitely makes watching the selection show a lot easier. But the resume that you guys have put up all year long, that's what makes the confidence, the ability to go, okay, I know we put up everything that we could have done, everything that we needed to do.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing. When you want to win, you have to be able to beat anybody. So it doesn't really matter where they send us.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about your message that you're going to give to your team now, because you guys have one of the most explosive offenses in the country that really can hang against some of the best, but you're going to see some of the very best arms within your regional alone.
I mean, nothing. We're just going to play our game. What the cool thing about this is that this senior class, their first win as a freshman was at Tennessee against Ashley Rogers. So they've been there. They've had that feeling. It's going to be a little bit different in regionals, but we're just going to tell them to play Miami softball. It's not any different. Obviously, Virginia is an amazing team. I know Coach Harden. And so we got to start there first. We can't look ahead. And that's the first thing we're going to do is one pitch at a time.
Yeah. And being able to stay within that mindset of offense, you guys have been crushing it, and being able to go, okay, I'm going to go with my strengths. I'm going to make a plan, and we're going to stick with that all year long. Is that kind of been the mentality of being able to stay within that? Tell me a little bit about that, Carly.
Yeah, I think we all just like our mentality is just like everyone up and down the lineup, everybody all throughout the program like can do it, and we trust each other. And I think that's what makes it so fun to play, because we play so loose, and when we play loose we do so good because we just have so much trust in like the people around us that they're going to produce.
Yeah, I got to call
Carly,
the game where you guys were playing at Oklahoma, and you could see that how much fun you guys have had just being able to be playing softball, just being on the field.
Yep. I mean, that's the number one thing. If you're not having fun doing what you're doing, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carly, when you look at just your career, what it's been, I mean, these last few weeks have been so monumental for you, and not only the way you're putting yourselves in the record books, but also you talk about you clearly love the game. I watch how your teammates celebrate you. I mean, they're your number one fans. You guys are looking to go as long as you possibly can, but just kind of reflect a little bit on what your legacy has been like for you and being able to do it at Miami of Ohio and really put this university on the map nationally.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest part of it all is just being able to play at this school and like make our alumni proud, make everybody that's coming through this program proud. Just being able to do it in one place means a lot to me. And like being able, like every single year, the group of girls we have is amazing. And this year is just super duper special. So it's been really, really fun.
I love that. I love that.
Just thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for joining us. We are so excited and we are thrilled to watch your regional. Cannot congratulate you guys enough. And we're going to be covering you guys throughout Softball America so people can stay tuned. But best of luck to you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
All right, Nicole, we have to break down everything we missed. Shout out to Tara for keeping us updated. I mean, we have number 6, UCLA. They have GCU, San Diego State, Virginia Tech, and then you have Missouri, who claimed the number 7 spot. This was a bubble team for me. You had them in there. They have Omaha, Indiana, which is a Big Ten team that just started really, I feel like, catching people's attention this past weekend in the Big Ten tournament. And then you have Washington. I mean, talk about another stacked regional.
It always happens like this. And right now we're looking at Stanford's regional, and they have Cal State Fullerton. They always do very well in regionals. They're always competitive, and they're just a scrappy, tough team. But again, I got to go back to Missouri's regional. You have Indiana and you have Washington. That's 2 really, really top 10 teams. Okay, I take that back. Stanford also is a team that is going to have, again, another tough team. They're going to have Mississippi State. That team, at one point, they were pretty high up in the polls. They went through a bit of a lull, but you've seen what they can do all year long.
Mississippi State is another team who I think it kind of came down to how well they did in the tournament. And if they would have went further, it could have really helped them here. But just not being able to go as far as I think some people might have thought they would have had the opportunity. You've seen how the tournament conference championships are really coming to effect from where certain teams are being placed. And we have our top 8. We did fairly well, I have to say. I think just a few. If we were to combine our list, I think we had the top 8. If we were to combine.
Right. Yeah, I'm going back. I'm looking. Duke's not in there, which I think is a shame because I know the RPI doesn't quite make sense for them to be logically. I know it doesn't quite make sense for them to be in there, but I do think that I think that they are a team that is good enough to be in the top 8. So the road for them is going to be a little bit tougher, but I think they might have gotten a little bit extra fuel to their fire once they're waiting. Okay, where are we going to end up? Where are we going to go?
So I feel like I could really speak to this because if you go back to Northwestern in 2022, we were on the bubble. We felt like we deserved an 18. We got a 9, and it was all the difference in why we ended up in Oklahoma City that season, having to go to ASU, feeling like we proved everything from a resume early on, and then within conference play. And you're right, it does add an extra fuel to your fire. This is also, I think, a big loss to the ACC as a conference overall, because you look at, they had a very talented conference this year. Duke not only won the regular season but the tournament, and the committee is saying that didn't matter to us as much as having 3 SEC schools. And that's something that I feel like overall, whether you're an ACC school, that only doesn't just hurt Duke but the rest of them.
I'm looking at just what we have so far with the top 8 and how I think the toughest ones out there. I think Tennessee has a very tough regional. I think the road for Stanford is also going to be really tough. And then Missouri also really stands out to me. Those 3, I think those are going to be the toughest regionals in the top 8. I don't know. What do you think?
I completely agree. Those are my top 2. I'm loving the people in the chat, though. A lot of Oklahoma fans we said coming on, and they all agree that they feel their regional is very tough. We talked about how tough Boston is. They showed that within their conference against some of the top teams in the nation, as they were always kind of flirting around that, 20 to 25 ranking. Oregon, we think, is a team who still is so well coached and has the capability of growing throughout even a regional. And I mean, we talked about 2 seeds being tough, but let's talk about 3 seeds also being really tough.
I know. It is a jam-packed regional. And again, going back, I feel like this has been the conversation since opening weekend, honestly, when you had Puerto Vallarta, you had all of that. But we will pretty soon be getting a guest here from one of the top 8 teams. But I think it has to do a lot with the parity of what's going on in sports.
Let's break down the Tennessee Regional. You touched on a little bit. That one for me right now, I think has the biggest potential to really shake things up. Even if you look at Virginia Tech, I think they're a team who has broken their own records when you look at their 100-plus home runs, but they're a team that has also struggled as of late. They've won 2 out of their last 5 games. They dropped an uncharacteristic series to Syracuse, and then they were upset in the first round by Boston College. So I think not only are these teams very talented, but also it comes into how good are they feeling coming into this tournament? Because let's face it, a team rides off of momentum. We know that better than anybody else. And when your team's feeling hot, you go into this tournament with a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And talking about a team being really hot right now, a lot of confidence. We have with us Longhorn Bella Dayton coming on in a couple seconds. Hey, Bella, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just got to see you the other day. I got to interview you. By the way, if you don't know, she has the best eyebrows out there. I had to ask her about them. But
I broke it down. Yes. When you were explaining how well you did it, I was like taking notes, Bella. I was like, this is it. These are the answers.
That's awesome.
She has the answers. But how are you feeling? I mean, we talked about the work that Texas has put in the regular season. Obviously, Big 12 tournament didn't turn out the way that you guys wanted. But the fact of the matter is what you guys did in regular season, the run that you guys went on, that propels you, that carries you into postseason. You got the number 1 seed. Like, how does that feel?
I think we're just super excited and grateful for just how far we've come and like all the work that we have put in. It's kind of just showing. with the seeding. And just with that, we're just excited to keep moving forward and to carry it over into this coming week for sure.
Bella, we were talking earlier about how good you guys are on all facets of the game. When you look at your pitching staff, you guys all have a sub-2 ERA, and then over on hitting, you lead the Big 12, almost a 400 batting average. Well, when I ask you, what is it about your team that makes this group really special?
I think we are just a family. Like, we have a bond. Everybody brings their own personalities to the table. Everybody has their own tools that we use, and we use it to our fullest capabilities. And I think that's what makes us special is like, we're not trying to be people that we're not, and we're not trying to compare ourselves, and we just stay within ourselves. And that's our motto is win from within, and we continue to do that.
Man, I love that because the comparison game can be so deadly in postseason, in regular season, just even how your individual performance is going. So I love that you guys are staying focused on the right stuff. Bella, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I
Thank
know
you, guys.
Sid does. Yeah.
Thank you. Best of luck, Bella.
Thank you.
Man.
I mean, Nicole, how great
fun.
is that? Being able to talk to these players right after some of their most exciting moments. We have been in those shoes before, and usually it's coaches meeting, and then you start preparing, and then you're like, what do I pack? Because you have to leave 3 days later. And so for these teams just to take time with us, because this is a crazy week for any athlete.
Yeah. And I think also at this point in the season, you are literally living out of a suitcase. I remember I would get all the stuff out of my suitcase, wash it, and then just put it back in the suitcase the next day. I was like, there's no hope here. It's just softball stuff.
It is. And one team that's going to be packing their bags, who has been making a statement nationally, is Michigan. And we have pitcher Lauren Durkowski. Nicole, we had a lot of Michigan fans in the chat who I know are very excited to see the Big Ten tournament champions. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I see you're repping your stuff. I love it.
You have to show off the hat because, Lauren, what a week it has been for your team. I know things didn't end the way you wanted to in the regular season, but you are still Big Ten champs now. You took your team on your back. You pitched 19 innings, over 350 pitches. I don't know how your arm's still attached, but I know you're going to be ready to go in the tournament. Give me your initial reaction to everything that this weekend has held for your team.
Yeah, it was awesome just being able to go out there and kind of show what we've worked for all season, and starting like the first day that we stepped on campus, definitely was our goal to get to that championship moment and be able to come out on top. So it was just a great feeling overall.
Yeah, and then being able to really create a new culture. Hutch, what she built at Michigan was incredible, but her time, she's retired. There's a new head coach. There's a new environment. There's a fresh feel to Michigan. How special has that been to be able to put in that work all year long and see it pay off?
It's been so special. I think that's what makes this win so great, is that this team knows, the struggles that we've been through, and we've worked on it together, and we really united. And a lot of our strength comes in our team. And because we are such a complete team, to do it with these girls is just so amazing.
Yeah, I love that.
Lauren, your career has been nothing short of amazing. I look at you guys fell short of it, but what you're doing this year, I mean, you are really making this a career, not only for yourself, but also, like Nicole mentioned, under Bonnie Phil, to be headed to the NCAA tournament for the very first time. We're excited to follow you at Supple America, and thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Betty. I love that. I mean,
she is so great.
I love that. She's the best.
Yeah.
And you look at that as more.
Ahead,
I think we need to catch up. I was just going to say, for Michigan, I know we have a lot of Michigan fans, Big Ten fans on here. You look at it's a program who Hutch brought to the NCAA like multiple times in a row. I mean, you're talking like 20 times, and they fall short of it in the first year of Bonnie Phil and Lauren Durkowski, along with Kiki Phil and some of those other players. Just the work that they put in the offseason to make sure that never happened again. It's a team who very much deserves this. But we also, like you mentioned, have a lot to catch up on. Number 10 is where Duke ultimately fell. They have Morgan State, Utah, South Carolina. Now you have Georgia at 11. I mean, initial thoughts from you, Nicole, because a stacked regional. This Utah team just came off playing in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, and Georgia. Oh, we're going. Do we want to talk Duke or do we want to talk Georgia?
Take your pick.
I'm gonna
Let's
go
talk.
with Georgia. I
Let's
think
do it.
because they have Liberty and they have Charlotte. They just got announced, and Georgia's a team that a lot of people going into the preseason, they were like, this is the team. Their offense, they have a good pitcher. Like, this is the team. And to see them at 11, I think some people weren't expecting that. But again, I think it's to the point that you made of the tournament performance and just the regular season, just the consistency with their matchups, with their series that they had, I think pushed them down a little bit lower. But this is a very, very potent offense. If you look at their numbers and just their percentages, they're pretty high. They have a ton of power, though, like a ton of power. But Liberty, I mean, they're a good team. We saw them come out hot a little bit.
And
What
since
about you?
you talked about Georgia, well, I think Georgia is a team that can take any team very late in the game. They have an offense to stay with any type of pitching staff. And what I loved is, Tara Henry was there for Supple America, and she talked about the conversations they were having in the dugout of, I believe in us. Like, there is nobody better than each other. And I think when you have a team who has that confidence, not only in themselves at the plate, but that if they don't get the job done, the person behind them is going to, better than anyone else. That's where championship and special caliber teams are made, and that's a team that I could see going to OKC. I'm sure they felt snubbed, but another person we're going to go to is Kelly Torres, who is one of our very own at Supple America. She is here. Kelly, thanks so much for coming on. We know it's been another crazy weekend for you. You graduated, first of all, earlier today, right after you won the ACC tournament. I don't even know how you're doing life right now, on the field, off the field.
Yeah, it's been crazy, having ACCs hosting it and then having graduation today. It's like we haven't had a second to just breathe. So it's been, just off and on for the past 3 days.
Man, okay, take me through. There was the moment of, okay, did we just win the game? Did we not? They're reviewing it. Take me through that moment in the tournament and what that felt like.
Yeah.
And then did that compare whenever you guys heard your name called for the selection show?
Yep. So that game, it was the semis against Clemson, and it was our second 10-inning game. So back to back, we were just like, dang, like something has to happen. Our bats were hot. We were just hitting it right to people. And with aggressive base running, things can happen. So when we saw Meyer, left fielder, slide, and like she popped up and was like, review that right now. I mean, the confidence that she had that she was safe, we were all like, okay, she got her hand in there.
You're like, oh, knew it right away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Kelly, you guys were go ahead.
Oh, I forgot to answer the second part, which was what I saw in I personally believe that Duke should have been higher. I think we have played and shown who we were to host the Supers, but we're gonna perform to whoever comes on the field against us. So at the end of the day, we don't have control over that. We're just gonna play Duke softball.
And that's what I really wanted to ask you about, because I had you guys in my top 8, and I understand that feeling if you feel like you deserved it, but like you said, there's some things that are out of your control. How quickly as a team did you guys go from, feeling upset to now eyes on what's next, and what statement can you guys make now moving forward?
Yeah. Well, we're playing a lot of teams that we haven't played before. So I think that alone is very exciting. I think now we can show who we are across different conferences. We're playing SEC, we're playing PAC. So it's like, it's exciting for us to be like, we're not an underdog, and to just show the world what Duke softball is.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm excited to watch what you guys do. I think you guys are so, so good and you're dangerous. Doesn't matter if you're at home hosting or whether you're on the road. You guys are so dangerous. So I'm excited to follow you guys.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Best of luck, Kelly. And Nicole, we actually are going to go right to another interview. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on. And look at that background. I mean, talk about a little flex in just the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay. Give me the reaction. Because you and I, we go way back. We're friends. This is a safe space. Tell me, what was the reaction whenever your team's name was called?
I mean, any opportunity to continue to play is a blessing. So honestly, we were excited. We knew we'd go in that range there from 6 to 12. So just excited to continue to play and be where we are.
And I honestly
Taylor, when I think
you guys have a pretty good regional. Like you guys have a pretty solid regional, and being able to navigate your way through that, like you have the opportunity to be set up pretty well.
Yeah, these are definitely teams that I haven't played much, or if at all, I'm not really sure. But it's just exciting to be able to play some other teams and just continue playing.
when you go from looking at the opponent, but then also looking at yourself and what you guys bring to every single field. I mean, you're such a leader on your team. You played on very talented teams, but this group feels a little bit different, a little bit special, I feel like, from a lot of the outsiders watching. What do you think is really unique about this group of women that you're playing alongside?
I think to start, we've been together for so long. Like we continue to talk about and hear from other people like, wow, I feel like you've been here for 6 years, but it's not long enough. And I agree. It's definitely been a long time. We're going to continue to push for each other and just go out how we want to. Like we don't want to let other things dictate how our season ends. So we're going to continue to control the things that we can control. And hopefully that gets us far.
Yeah, I love it. Last thing before you go, with LSU, with you guys pounding on that door time after time after time. I know you guys kind of talked about like your motto, your theme being about the deck of cards. What is the consistency? Because a lot of you guys have been there at that door, and you guys have obviously changed a little bit mentally of, okay, we're at the next level now. But how do you maintain that whenever it gets to postseason and not let the nerves take over?
Yeah, I think it's with the mindset of just refusing to lose. Like it's something we talked about a little bit, the SEC tournament against, or in our 14 inning game against Alabama. Like we just continue to tell each other, like, we're not losing. Like we're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to stick together and we're going to get it done. So I think just continuing that mentality of just continuing to do it for each other.
I love it. All right, Tay, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm excited to see what LSU does because, like I said, like they've been pounding on that door time and time again, and you felt like they had all the pieces and they couldn't quite just get something to click. And this year, more than ever, how they started, you go, okay, they have all the pieces, they're clicking. It's just about getting over that, like just that little hump, right?
It absolutely is. And I love how Taylor said that 6 years still hasn't felt like enough for her because, to be honest, I still want her to keep playing. I'm like, 6 years wasn't enough watching her play and just her range at shortstop and the confidence that she has every time she steps in the box. But you look at this LSU, I think they have been together for so long and you've seen them grown with as a team, but it's also bringing in pieces like Kelly Lynch that has really elevated them. And for her, it's kind of restarted her pitching career that we saw her come off so hot for Washington. And then she wasn't quite the ace. And now just the way she's been able to rebuild herself. And, it's props to LSU for just feeding her with that confidence and really developing her as a pitcher.
Okay, so with this announcement, I have to talk about it because we haven't dissected the last few teams, but Louisiana and A&M, they're both getting to host. Like that is so cool to me because these are two teams that haven't hosted in a while. Wasn't sure if we'd see Louisiana. I love the fact that they were able to get in.
I agree. And it also, again, it shows just kind of the parity within the conferences where you've seen some people might have not had the most wins within their conference, but their strength of schedule. And Nicole, I have to touch on really quickly, Penn State just made it in. That is now the fourth Big Ten team that nobody was really sure how many were going to get in. They knew Northwestern, they knew Michigan, but you have the addition of Indiana, who made a stellar run in the Big Ten tournament. But you had Penn State, who really was, making a name for themselves nationally early. However, they only won 4 of their last 13 games, but they still have Bridget Nemeth, who was Big Ten Freshman of the Year. And we also have Texas State now. I could see your reaction. You were dying on that one.
I was like wondering, I'm like, where are they? They need to be in. Where the heck are they? Texas State is a team that has one of the best pitchers in the entire country with Jessica Mullins. She is an arm that can just whip it around. So they have a couple of really, really great offensive players that really make a difference. But they've played A&M earlier in the year. They've played Texas. They've played Baylor. So they face top teams. They face that competition. I think the A&M Regional is another one that we're going to have to be keeping an eye out for.
I mean, between Texas A&M and Texas State, or whoever comes out of that to potentially then go and face Texas, like you mentioned, what a showdown that's going to be. I mean, that has to be one of the toughest regionals. We're taking a look at all of our top 16 teams. We mentioned Tennessee. I think that's an extremely tough regional. Texas A&M. I don't think it's going to get much better than this. Are there a few regionals that you're really circling right now? Because I have a few in mind.
Yeah, you go first. You go first. I want to hear.
Well, to start, I mean, we talk about Tennessee. I still think that's one of the best. After that, you look at, in terms of LSU, I think that is a 19. I think they have a good regional. I think Duke is going to be interesting within Utah. I don't think we got to talk about that enough because I think Utah is super gritty. We've seen them be able to make it to the Women's College World Series in years that nobody counted them. So I think that's going to be a really interesting team. But once you start to get to the bottom, there's a few matchups we didn't even talk about. Alabama at 14, they're going to have Clemson coming in. You still have Valerie Cagle, who is the 2023 reigning, college player of the year, one of the best two-way players in the game. So that's another one that's going to be really interesting. Auburn coming to Florida State. I mean, these matchups are unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll just go out and say it. I'm surprised that Alabama is as high as they are. I did not expect them to. I didn't. You look at their schedule, and they had some really, really bad losses. And again, it's being able to play against some of the top teams, so that helps them. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what their regional looks like, they're going to have to go through Clemson. And Clemson with Valerie Cagle, I am very curious to see how that plays out, especially because Clemson, they're not quite at the level that they were last year. But all that aside, you get a little bit of chip on your shoulder, right? And we heard it a little bit from Kelly at Duke. ACC, I think the trend and the theme with them is going to be who has a chip on their shoulder, who's going to go into their regional with, I don't want to say a little bit of a grudge, but a little bit of something to prove of, yeah, you missed this one, right? And I think Clemson really will embody that as they go into the Alabama regional.
And while they've been down, we talked about a bit this year, you still have Millie Thompson and Reagan Spencer who have stepped up in a huge way, where we've seen Valerie Cagle maybe not quite the 2023 version of her because there's constantly scouting reports. I mean, teams are looking at so much film against her and trying to figure out every year how we can be better. Duke should have been higher. I agree. I know Kelly agrees, but I think for them, It's using that as fuel. And let's also talk about Florida State, the fact that was a team who is at the bottom, just barely hosted a regional, and was in the national championship game and went toe-to-toe with Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that. Just the ability to remind yourself of, okay, that's who we are. That's what we can do. That's the level that we can perform at. Let's stay there. Let's stay consistent. Because in postseason, anything can happen. It doesn't matter where you're seated. It doesn't matter what you did. If you've beaten a team before, if they've beat you before, it's fresh start, new slate of who's going to be tougher mentally, because that's what it comes down to, of the mental toughness, the mental focus that really makes or breaks teams, and these regionals especially, because you're exhausted. There's a lot of travel going on, conference tournaments, arms are starting to feel that wear and tear, and you have a lot of games to go through in a single weekend. It feels almost like the first week of preseason where you're done and you're like, oh my gosh, I need rest, I need a break, right? So who mentally can stay locked in and stay focused throughout the whole weekend?
And kind of a team we haven't talked about on here, but one that you and I have talked about a ton is UCF. And I think it's a team that can also make noise. I think it's a very gritty type of a team. They're very bought in within themselves and as their team culture and what Coach Bear is doing down there. They added in a ton of transfers last year. Chloe Evans, Jas Severs, I mean, you name it. And this also a team who could very well really be competitive against Florida State and Auburn as well.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be a problem. They are going to be a problem. They have good pitching, and they have had competitive games. I think of them and Baylor as two teams that their record might not reflect it, but they also had to face, at the time, the top 4 teams in the country. And so that's a tough matchup as well. But they know how to be gritty. They know how to go toe to toe with really, really tough competitions, really good teams. I'm just scrolling over right now. So we have Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 2, and then farther down, I'm trying to find all the Big 12 teams. And we have Baylor at Louisiana. We have UCF at Florida. I mean, we have 4, and those are really, really solid teams. I am a little bummed that we didn't get to see BYU make it into the tournament, but I do think at the end of the day, there's one too many losses on their slate to be able to get into that conference tournament. But I'm curious, like, what are you guys watching? Like, what are you guys thinking? What are your thoughts? I would love to hear about that. And while you guys are typing frantically, we're going to have from Texas State, Jessica Mullins hop on.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey guys.
Okay.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
Emotion.
Of course. Excited to be here.
What are you feeling right now? We got to see your reaction on ESPN. What are you feeling?
Just overall a bunch of excitement. I mean, this past weekend, just hosting conference tournament at our place, we had Bobcat Nation show up, and so it was an electric environment that we haven't been able to experience a lot of times before, except for like our bowl game that we've had in the past year. But it's really exciting to be able to play close to home at A&M and familiar territory, and it's close enough that our Bobcat Nation can show up and just continue to rock on.
Yeah.
Jessica, when you're on the mound, I just feel so much confidence from you. And it really doesn't seem to matter who you're facing. You know, you look at some of the teams you're going to have to get through, Texas A&M, and then potentially a Texas showdown. Tell me, when you're on the mound, what is it about your game that just makes you so confident within yourself and then your defense behind you?
I think growing up, I've always known that I was a small kid. I really didn't have that much meat to me, so I had to grow my mentality a lot. And one of my former coaches had told me, he said, "You got to be the biggest, baddest pitcher out there, no matter who's in the other dugout, who's gonna be, hitting against you." And I've just kind of stuck with that. And another coach had said, "Be so strong that they can't ignore you." And so those small little mental things that a lot of these coaches don't really like, they don't know if it's going to stick with you or not. Like that stuck with me, because I may be small, but I'm going to act like I'm the toughest person out there. And I'm going to act like I can lift more than you. I can do anything better than you. And I think that's what every pitcher needs to have. They need to have that confident mentality.
Yeah, and also with your team offense, right? You guys have quite the senior class. You guys have a lot of experience, and I got to call a couple of y'all's games earlier this year, and you can tell that there is a level of mental maturity that Texas State didn't have last year. You guys have all the makings of, okay, we're in the right space, but how are you guys going to stay locked in and be able to continue that? Like you said, you're in familiar territory. It won't be too overwhelming, but how do you keep it within yourselves and not get too big, too out of yourself?
So this past weekend, we stuck to the mentality of playing the game one pitch at a time, and we've been doing that this entire season. I feel like that's why we've had so much success. But you said what you said, mental maturity, and I believe that playing the game one pitch at a time and just reminding each other throughout the game to play it one pitch at a time and just let it go through the way it's supposed to go through. We're locked in. We're locked in already. So.
I love it. Locked in.
Yes, ma'am.
Jessica, when you speak, I want to clap because I think you're so empowering. The message that you give to younger players, I mean, is seriously so amazing. What you have done, what does it mean to be able to do it at your school and really just put your team on this map?
Sydney, you're gonna make me cry over here. I just love.
It's okay. Tears are welcome.
I won't cry yet, not yet. There are many tears to be shed later on, but I love being able to let the girls know that they can do it no matter where they're at. And I was overlooked a lot. Like I said, I was a very small player. I'm still considered a small player. I haven't gained any weight since my junior year of high school, actually. So I've always been pretty small, but I like coming from a mid-major school. I know it's not like the biggest platform that you can have, but the grass is green where you water it. And I love being able to inspire the kiddos that are just around this area. So I know that a lot of them come to our games and they just hang on to every single player that we have here, and you just love seeing their smiling faces. So yeah, just being able to represent Texas State is a big thing because I just love this school with all my heart.
I love that.
We absolutely love that. I mean, like I said, what you have done for the game, not only Texas State, but how you've grown the sport. I know so many young players look up to you. We love covering you here, and thank you so much for just spending a few minutes with us. And we're excited to follow you in regionals.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And eat them up.
Eat them up. She's great. Oh man, I'm a big Texas State fan. Like I said, I got to call some of their games, and not only is she, like you were saying, like she exudes confidence, but she also has a ton of experience within her senior class. And like I said, they've played A&M before. It's not one of those instances where you're going in and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest game that I've played all year, and it's postseason, and it's my last year. They don't quite have to deal with the trifecta of all those emotions. It's just, okay, we've been here before. It was a really close game. I know we can win. Like that is the mentality that these girls are going to be having going into this A&M regional.
And we always talk about the Power 5 schools who, make a run for it every year, but you look at specifically that school and then like Miami of Ohio and just how they have built themselves on the map nationally. I mean, I love it, and I think it should only make more girls fall in love with the sport who you don't have to go to the Power 5 to make it to the NCAA tournament and then to, feel like you have a shot to make it to regional supers, Women's College World Series. And I think that's the great thing about our sport and this parity we're starting to see. Let's dive a little bit into some of the committee decisions that we missed. We did know that committee said LSU ended the season 17-15. Duke, I think the biggest thing we were wondering why they didn't get the top 8. What everyone's saying, it was their strength of schedule, which it's always such a tough battle, I feel like, for coaches being able to plan for it and what the committee is going to look for. On one hand, you want to make sure that your team can get enough wins to be able to put yourself in a great resume, but also challenging yourself enough so they can't come back at you and say, well, you didn't play anyone in the top 25.
Yeah, and it's just tough, like you said, just being able to manage it. And sometimes teams don't want to play you. and then you're stuck in an impasse. Sometimes the schedule, like, it just doesn't work out. The weather, it just doesn't work out. I mean, we saw several teams lose. I would say maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 top 10 matchups, top 25 matchups, just because rain delays and weather got canceled. I mean, a lot of teams, especially like in the Big 12, I think of SEC, you get that out of conference top 10 matchups. You see those in preseason. A lot of those got canceled at the Mary Nutter. A lot of those got canceled in Clearwater, Puerto Vallarta. So there were some difficulties being able to get those games in, one, period, because the number does matter, but also second, and being able to get, okay, I have this win against this really big other top 5 Power 5 conference, and I got that win in preseason, because you can look back and go, okay, check, they check off that box.
You know, as you are talking about those tournaments, it makes me think back to when we both were on call for the Mary Nutter, and I had a handful of UCLA games, and that was a time where it felt like UCLA wasn't the program standard that we'd seen them at the past few years. They had a lot of tough losses, and it was like everyone was kind of hitting the panic button and questioning, is UCLA going to be what we have known them to be, a championship caliber team that can fight for a Pac-12 tournament and make it to Oklahoma City? And while people had their doubts, it felt like internally they had to really block out the noise and for the first time lean on that belief with they had within themselves and each other, and not just lean on the belief that fans and the outside noise were giving them. And I remember just talking to players and them saying they never faced any adversity last season all the way through until the regionals, when it shocked everybody when we saw some of the greatest players, you know, end their careers early. But I think that's going to feed this team, who's still very young, but for those returners like Maya Brady and others who remember that feeling, I think they're going to be so much more experienced. And because they've already battled through so much adversity earlier in the season, this is one team that I'm really excited to see play in postseason.
Yeah. And like you said, I think the teams that have the toughest roads through postseason, those are the teams that are ready for World Series. The ones that kind of have a little bit of a cakewalk, it is a bit of a shock whenever you get to the World Series. And these are teams you don't get a break. And it's hard and it's tough and you have to be ready. And I think UCLA, they experienced that in regular season. They had to battle that. They had to figure out what their identity was, because I think that was what the struggle was early on. But with that, talk about a team who has known how to battle, has known how to be tough, and a player who knows all of that. We have Ivy Rosenberry from Oklahoma State joining us too. Well,
Hi.
hey there, Ivy.
How are you
Hi,
guys?
Ivy.
We are having a little connection issues.
We're
so
great.
I apologize in advance.
Oh, no,
Ivy,
you are right on time, right when it matters
you are
most.
perfect. Yeah, you're perfect. So you got the call. You guys are excited, and Coach Gajewski talks with you guys. What's the message? What is he saying to you guys?
Yeah, basically just that, like, this is great. Like, any position that we were going to be in, like, we were excited. Obviously, it's really exciting to host, or the chance to host, regionals and supers, like, at your place. It's a lot easier to play in our stadium than it is certain stadiums across the country. And after 4 years of playing, you learn that. But basically just, like, this is good. Everything's good. And it's also really special to be a top 8 program. So just that, like, we earned it, and to, like, celebrate it tonight, like, be excited tonight, but tomorrow practice 4:00. Like, we have to be ready to go again, because the work's far from over.
I love that.
Ivy, when I look at what you do on the mound, and then also with Lexi Kilfoyle, I think you guys are some of, the best battery pack when I look at aces. How much do you guys just lean on one another in terms of just these games and being able to go against any of the best offensive lineups?
Yeah, I would say Lexi and I talk like a lot, like mentally, or just kind of, like trying to figure out like what a game plan is. It's been different this year that like we kind of like split games rather than, you take 7, then I'll take 7. I love that more personally, but it's been good. Lexi's a great teammate, like on and off the field. So even if it's not softball related, I know I can lean on her for everything. So people have been calling us like Batman and Robin, like I'm her Robin.
I
I
love
love
that.
But it's super cool. So I love having Lexi as a teammate, and I wouldn't want to be like fighting with anyone else on the mound. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's another thing that you see. I talked to you guys about it at the Big 12 tournament, but just the joy that you see from your team. I mean, you guys are just, you genuinely look like, hey, I'm happy to be here. Like, I am happy to be on the field playing, and I enjoy my teammate to my left and my teammate to the right. And that makes me want to go ride or die. Like, tell me a little bit about like the feeling of this team.
yeah, I would say that this is definitely different than anything I've had, and it's so cliche because people always say, "Oh, this team's so great," and but truly, 4 years of softball later, and I feel like I can lean on any teammate, no matter what situation. And truly, I don't look to the same person each time that I'm on the mound. Like I love looking at different people just because everyone's always going to give me that like solid answer of like, "Hey, we're good," or like, "Go get them." Like we have work to do. And I do give a lot of credit. We're in Broken Bow, Oklahoma right now as like a team retreat, and we always do that. You can like see out the window like a huge like lake and mountain and stuff.
Oh
So
my gosh.
they're super cool. This is where we usually watch the selection show and everything. So it just gives us a break from Stillwater and, just softball. And we just get to hang out, and there's always a hot tub, and it's just a good time. So
Oh my
this,
gosh.
this team connected really early, and I think it was a big like deal to do in the fall with our Broken Boat trip.
I love that. Well, whenever you have a hot tub ready to go, it's easy. Like you're just relaxed.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about this retreat before you go, because I'm dying. I've never heard of a team doing that. Talk about right before they go into the NCAA tournament, and you guys are doing it now in the craziest time of the year. How are you just able to reset with one another, and what are you guys doing to really connect?
Yeah, so we usually do a trip in the fall and the spring. So this is my 4th trip coming in as a junior here. And we do everything. We've gone like swimming in the lake before. We've gone kayaking. This trip we went to a former teammate's house, and her family just had us, and we just kind of, hung out. They had like every game you can imagine: ping pong, shuffleboard, like spike ball. We went fishing today. I caught my first ever fish. That was cool.
Oh.
That deserves a round of applause.
So basically just like getting to like reconnect with each other on like a different level rather than on the softball field. And whenever we're done with practice, it's like do I really want to see you some more? But because it's hard, because we see each other 24/7, and all we talk about is softball and everything like that. So in reality, just getting to like come here and just be kids, almost like kids again, like just doing whatever we want. We made s'mores last night. Like it's just so fun and random, and it's just a good time. It's good for our team, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the ability to get yourself in the right headspace of like finals just ended, the Big 12 tournament, end of regular season conference, you have selection show, and it just gives you a moment to have pause and go, okay, where am I? What am I going to want to focus on? And then how can I just take a breath and reset myself before I throw myself into a whole nother month of crazy, crazy, crazy softball. But I love that from you guys. And I do think that's the difference. Like you see that on the field, and it starts off field. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so fun here, and I've never been a part of anything like this before I came here, so it's different, but it's good for our team, truly. So I think it just gives us, like you said, literally a mental reset and be kids again. And then tomorrow morning we'll wake up and we'll head back to Stillwater, and 4 hours of driving, we just get to think about softball and getting back at it. So
I love
That
it.
is perfect. And I think next year, Nicole, we're gonna have to do this show from the retreat, because I want an invite after you described it. So we're gonna make that happen. But Ivy, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight, and enjoy it with your team, the retreat, and best of luck in the tournament.
thank you guys. I appreciate you having me. Go Pokes.
I love everyone's sign out.
That's
Like
so
that's
fun.
so great.
I know, right? I need to come up with a new sign up for myself. because
We
obviously
just
I'm
need a
not at
personal one.
Oklahoma
Yeah.
anymore. We need like a Softball America sign out. I don't know,
Like if I
Tara,
do an
like
S, can you do an
like an
A?
essay, like Softball
We'll try.
America. I
Oh my
love
goodness.
that.
Well, Nicole, I know we have just like really kind of dreamt up this live reaction show. We came at it with how is this going to be? And I have to say the best part is talking to the athletes. And you look at the players we've gotten to talk to, they're some of the best players in college softball right now, but it's who they are as people. You talk to Ivy, Kelly, Jessica, Lauren. I mean, there are just what I love is they're so humble and so just present within the moment and wanting to grow the sport. I think that's the best part. I always say the people who play softball are what make the sport so special.
Yeah, I mean, Bella Dayton talking about how Texas, like they're such
Yeah.
a family. And that's the key, I think, whenever you go into postseason. You see those teams that are performing at that high level. It's that connection of, okay, I love to play softball with you, but who are you off field? Who are you that I'm able to connect and go, okay, I want to go the extra mile. I want to do good not just for myself, but for you, my teammate, for you, my team, right? And in those teams, you see it, and they just got a little extra something to them that pushes them a little bit farther into postseason. At least
I
that's
completely agree.
what I've seen so far. And you can have a talented team. I've been a part of a talented team that is so good, but there's just not quite something together, and you don't perform as well versus maybe you're not as good, but the connection is there, the synergy is there, the buy-in is there, and you go leaps and bounds beyond what the other team might have accomplished, right? And I think that's going to be the difference maker in this postseason, especially because I feel like the playing field is a little bit more even than it has been in years past. And there's several regionals. I know there's always going to be the regionals where everybody goes, ooh, that one's tough. That's a hard one. But I do think that this year more than ever, that's going to be the difference maker in these regionals is how's your team connection? How's your team chemistry? And then your mindset, like mentally, like thumbs up right there. But mentally, where are you? Are you bought in? Are you hunting? Are you wanting to leave it all out on the field? Or are you going to be playing scared? That's the difference maker. But I am curious, who do you think has the toughest regional? And then who do you think has the easiest?
Oof. I'm going to be scrolling through as I respond to everything you said. I think is absolutely completely true. When I look back at our 2022 team that did make it to Oklahoma City, there was as much talent in my other 4 years, but it came down to, as silly as it sounds, we had written on our board in game 3 against Arizona State, friendship wins. And we were down 5-0 in the 5th, and we were so bought into friendship literally wins championships. And as cliche as it sounds, it is so unbelievably true. And until you've been on those teams who have it, you understand how that really is the driving force. And I agree. I think it's going to be the difference maker. And there's friendships, but then there's friendships within postseason because that when the game is on the line, the stress is at an all-time high. People are playing, wondering if it's going to be their last weekend ever of college softball. That's when a lot of true colors come out. And that's also when special relationships are built that you have then for a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think to a point, it's also okay mentally. Where are you in terms of, okay, this is a level that we expect to play at? And do we have 3 players here and the rest of the team down here? Do we have 5 players here and the rest of the team here? I think the teams that can have those friendships and then get 6, 7, if you have 6 or 7 girls on a team to buy in, you're golden. You're solid. It is so hard to be able to see, it's so hard to be able to see anything else other than, all right, like this is our goal. This one team, one dream kind of thing. But while you're looking through, I will say that I think probably the toughest regional I'm a little stuck right now. I want to say Tennessee because it's Tennessee, Dayton, Miami, Ohio, and Virginia. Miami, Ohio, and Virginia. Virginia is a bit of a sleeper team, kind of underrated, but they're very, very good. And then Miami, Ohio. I mean, if any's gonna, if anybody is gonna beat the offensive
Yeah.
or gonna bring the offensive numbers against the pitching staff of Tennessee, it's gonna be them. They are so consistent offensively. I think that's gonna be one of the toughest regionals out there. And then one of the
And then
easier regionals. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, going off of your tough one, I agree. I think the other one that I would say is equally as tough is Missouri's. I look at you have Indiana, who I think is really starting to become the Indiana team that a lot of people expected. Brianna Copeland at the helm, not only as a leadoff hitter, but also in the circle. And then you have Washington, who at the beginning of the year, I said a woman college World Series team, point blank. And I still believe that whether they are young and they have players who I don't want to say are inexperienced, but haven't played, on the biggest stages before. I still think they are a team that really thrive being in the underdog position.
They do. I think you summed up Washington perfectly there. They do really well in that underdog position, and you always see them kind of find an extra spark in postseason. Who has another tough one is Florida State. Somebody just commented and said Florida State has a gauntlet. They have Auburn, UCF. I mean, that is a tough, and you just talked about the Missouri Regional, but yeah, having Auburn, you saw the great game that they had with Alabama, UCF, they have great pitching, great defense, and just a lot of transfers that have come in that have experienced that postseason mentality, that have been exposed to winning and losing in postseason, but they've been there. They're going to be able to bring that experience to UCF, and that's going to help them a lot. But I'll let you go first. Which regional do you think has the easiest route?
I am going to start with UCLA. I think there's a few easy ones, but I think UCLA is definitely at the top of that. Not to say can count GCU, San Diego State out at all. So San Diego State, let me tell you, they catch people when they're sleeping every single time. I've been in those games against them. I understand when they get hot and what they can do. So maybe I just fueled the fire for them. I don't know. I think they're talented, I promise. And then I've also seen Virginia Tech when they have just ridiculous offensive numbers. There's a reason why, they've hit 100+ home runs. However, I was on call when they played Syracuse, and I just didn't see their hitters make adjustments when I expected them to. Syracuse threw Lindsey Hendricks, who, very talented last 2 weeks of her career, but she throws a 60-mile-per-hour backdoor curveball and a changeup. And they just continue to really just not have what I would say quality at bats and learn from each other. So I think for that reason, UCLA playing their best softball, they've got a really good shot in it.
Yeah, for me, I would say LSU. They have Jackson State, Southern Illinois, and Cal. I think the way that they had been playing for a short period caused them to fall lower. If you're falling like that, if you're going down in the ranks just a little bit, you're going to get a different level because you're going to, in supers, you're going to have to match up with a tougher team. But as far as regionals go, the team that LSU is, I think they're much better than their record shows. They just didn't play to it. They didn't find it consistently. So if LSU plays how they can, I think that they are going to be able to get through this regional pretty easy because they are, I think they could have been a top 5 team. They could have been a top 4 team. But they just struggled with the consistency, but we talked about it, the talent is there. The ability is there. So with them falling that low, I think their regional is going to be easier for them if they perform to their ability. But what do you think?
What's so funny?
Oh, go ahead.
We asked about what's the easy regionals, and as I'm scrolling through them, I'm like, not an easy regional, not an easy regional. I've said that about like 12 of them. I hit, Arkansas, who I'm like, oh, I feel like they have a really good shot. And then I'm like, gosh, Arizona is also in there, who, what we saw them do in the final few weeks of Pac-12 play. It's like you have gauntlet regional after gauntlet regional. Louisiana, we talked about I think they have, a better regional, but you still are facing an Ole Miss and a Baylor who we saw Baylor, at times put up a very impressive resume. However, if we did have an easy category, I'd put more of that one in one. But there's not a single region on here that I would say is a just complete cakewalk.
Yeah. And so going through, okay, you're through the gauntlet, you're through regionals, you're like, okay, I'm out. Now you have matchups that are supers and the level is a little bit tighter. Now you have to face teams 3 games in a row, hopefully for some 2 games in a row. But tell me your thoughts. So say LSU, they get through their regional. Stanford, they have a tough one, but they get through their regional. What are your thoughts on the Stanford LSU?
Oh, well, it's that I'm gonna hopefully either be at the stadium or I will be glued to my TV. Those are my initial thoughts. But I have to say, when you look at this LSU team, I think they thrive in all assets of the game. We're seeing that in just their maturity and their experience of this group, as Taylor said, has been together for a really long time. Now, what Stanford has within Nigeria Kennedy, I mean, that is just like the outlying factor. When she is on the mound, she has the capability to win a ball game with just how talented she is. You look at one of the highest velocity rise balls that has one of the best, truest breaks in the game. When she's on the mound, she can beat any team. I don't care who they are. So I think it just comes down to is how much would she have in the tank to go up against a very potent LSU lineup that gets better every time they see a new pitcher. How much does she have in the tank? But then also, I think it really comes down to how can Stanford's offense go up against LSU pitching? To me, that matchup right there is what determines that series.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think something that LSU has in their favor is the fact that Kelly Lynch, they faced her whenever she was at Washington year after year after year. They, they know who she is, right? But they kind of don't, because what we've seen from her this year, she's a different pitcher. Her game has changed, her consistency has changed. Like, she is very much different. And I think if you're a player and you go, okay, I know what she throws, it's a lot easier as a hitter whenever you face the pitcher before to go, okay, this is who she is. And then you go out into the game and all of a sudden it's completely different. The game plan is off, right? And I think Kelly Lynch, I think LSU is going to have to use their entire pitching staff. But I think her being different is going to be a huge advantage, because Stanford is going to think she's one way when she's a completely different pitcher, different spin, different movement, a lot more confident, a lot more consistent.
And just the interviews I've heard Kelly give, since she's been at LSU, it talks about, not to say that Washington didn't believe in her, but I think she went from being the girl that they leaned on to not, is a really hard battle. And I think LSU just not only welcomed her with open arms, but they made her feel so important. Again, not to say that Washington didn't, but sometimes just coming into that new team, you feel that sense of belonging. And Beth does a great job at developing pitchers and specifically really just honing in on their spin. I think she's one of the best to do it. You look at her resume of the pitchers that have come out of there, some of the very best. We also talked about storylines. It could be another Oklahoma Florida State matchup. Again, I just don't think they're a coincidence. Like, I love the storylines. I'm here for it.
I am looking at these storylines and I didn't. No, it was Oklahoma State. I was about to say, didn't Texas and Florida meet up earlier? But that was the game that wasn't supposed to happen. That was Florida and Oklahoma State. But I mean, Texas and Florida, that game, I'm like, man, that's a World Series game. I feel like, I think those two together, oh my gosh, like that game is going to be fun. Oklahoma, Florida State, that always shows out. I mean, that's always a fun one to watch.
If that Florida game happens, I feel like Mike White has to come on Walton's World at some point. Like, I feel like we have to see that interview because it would be iconic from two of the best male coaches within the game.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as super regional matchups, I'm going through and looking. So You have Texas and A&M. You have Oklahoma and Florida State. You have Tennessee and Alabama, which can we take a slight pause on that? I think that one is going to be really fun because they've seen each other so many times already this year in conference. Like that one's going to be really fun. I literally, I'm looking at this bracket and I'm like, I don't know who's going to win what. I don't know who's going to go where. Okay. This is a perfect time to talk about this. But Supple America, they're actually doing a bracket challenge. Prayers as I fill mine out because I have no idea how much to go. But if you're watching, make sure you go in and fill out that bracket challenge. That's going to be a fun way. And the winner of the bracket challenge actually gets a free trip to Rosemont, right?
Doesn't get much better than that. Going to watch, pro softball. I mean, talk about it's the perfect way. You go from cheering on the college teams to being able to go visit the pro and watch some of your favorite college players then go play their first pro games. I mean, that sounds like a once in a lifetime trip. Maybe, Nicole, we could get in on it again and be able to do a podcast from there. This show is really about Nicole and I planning our next trip. I want everyone to know that.
I mean, that trip would be on our dime, but if you do win, your flight, your hotel, and your tickets, they're all comped, they're all covered. So maybe we just have to win the bracket ourselves. I don't know.
We'll put our heads together after and we'll discuss. But I want everyone who's listening to fill out their own brackets to go and try to beat us because they call it March Madness, but this has to be like May mayhem within college softball.
I
think I just came up with something.
I think you did. I love that. It's so true, though. I mean, you heard all the buzz going around about women's basketball, and rightly so. But man, college softball, you gotta get your brackets together. Like, I want to see. Like, do you make your bracket based off vibes? Do you make your bracket based off mascots? Do you make your bracket based off conference? Like, I'm so curious. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes, and with the matchups that are here, like you could be totally right. Like that's how it could go.
You said it perfectly. You said we are going to get Women's College World Series matchups before the Women's College World Series. And I think that is so true this year. As I'm taking a look at the bracket even more, let's talk about a Georgia UCLA matchup because that one right now, you can flip a coin for me. I could make arguments on both sides.
Let me hear them. Let me hear the argument. Do you want to go pro Georgia or pro UCLA? Let me hear. Let me hear you go pro Georgia first.
Oh, great one. Okay. Georgia, we talked about it before. I mean, one of the most lethal offenses. I think we've seen that across the board. But not only that, they have pitching and they have great defense. But what I will say, I mentioned it before, I feel like it's just this belief. I've been able to talk to Jaden Fields, who, is now within her last year of playing college softball. And she just says, Sydney, this group is so special because we just trust one another and we believe in one another. And we've been saying it. That is the difference maker. And I think that's why this Georgia team could have what it takes to bring them back to the Women's College World Series because they have the talent, I think, more so than they've had in the last few years, but they have the talent and they have the chemistry. And I don't know if they've been able to have both in a few years. And I think that could be the secret piece for them. However, there would be going up against a UCLA team, if I'm going to flip it, who has only grown throughout the year. This is a very young team, a very young pitching staff who has just been sponges. And you've seen them get so much better in not only how they're setting pitchers up, but how they're executing their spots and their spins. And what I love most about this pitching staff is they keep some of the best lineups, which you'd have to do against Georgia, off plane and off balance. They're so smart in being able to work a rise or a curve inside to speed up a hitter, but then they have that nasty off-speed pitch in the outer half, which I think could be a really deadly matchup against an offense-heavy Georgia team.
Which I think is so cool. Going into this year, Coach I was telling me like, okay, I'm working with the hitters this year. And I was like, what? Because typically she has been pitcher, but the staff came together and they said, you know what, I think this is what we need. We have a really young team. Like, let's make a switch. And she's been working, she's been working with the pitchers. She typically works with the hitters. She's been working with the pitchers this year. And Lisa Fernandez has been working with the hitters, which you think of Lisa Fernandez, and she had amazing at bat, but you always go to who she was as a pitcher. And you're going, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. In the beginning of UCLA, you were kind of like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But that's a big change. And they've settled in. They have figured out their identity. And now you're like, holy cow, that was genius, right? And I think it goes a long way to the leaders on their team kind of finding their way. So you think of Maya Brady, and you can't think of UCLA without their literal person behind it all, behind the plate, Charlize Palacios. I mean, the conference tournament, the home run that she had, I mean, and that wasn't the first time, right? I think it's been really cool to see this UCLA team literally grow in front of our eyes throughout the season, going from a young and experienced team who kind of looks a little scared, to be honest, of the expectations that they had before them, and also scared of the teams that they were playing. They just weren't ready, to going out and battling and going toe to toe. Like, it's been fun to watch.
You make such a great point with Lisa Fernandez, because we remember the pitcher she is. She also hit number 3 for, USA. We cannot discredit that at all. She also had as talented of a bat. But I think what's really interesting about it, and I love the switch, is because think about it, she just worked with some of the best pitchers in the game and understanding how to get the best hitters out, to now be able to take that knowledge to the hitting side and understand what pitching coaches are most likely doing to her hitting lineup. I think it's really unique. And I think a lot of hitting coaches can't say they've had that experience in coaching top caliber pitching. And that is, I think, going to become their secret weapon the more she's working with the hitters. Let's also talk about, you have number 15. We talked about FSU regional and how they could go up against Auburn pitching within Panta and Lowe. I mean, give me your thoughts.
Oh my gosh. I think this one is going to come down to defense, because I think both of the pitchers are going to be great on both sides, but the hitters are too good to be held down the entire time. I think it's going to come down to who has going to be the most consistent defensively. But I don't think there's going to be a ton of plays to be made where you're like, wow, that was incredible. But I think there's going to be just a gut feeling. I don't know why, but I think there's going to be 2 plays defensively that are going to be made in that game that are really, it's going to impact how it either goes to Auburn or it goes against him, right? And I think that's going to be the playmaker's defense. And going to school at Oklahoma, Coach Gasso always talked about defense wins championships. And I can tell you time and time again, like, yes, you have to score to win, but if you have a defense that maybe you get the hit, but you're going for the double and the outfielder makes a great play, or the shortstop has a great release and she gets a great read and she gets out at first before the run scores. Like, there's so many times where defense goes into play and people don't really realize the impact of it that play had until later or after the game. So I think for that one specifically, it's gonna be a great battle between the pitchers, but it's gonna come down to defense. Tell me
haven't been Yes, I will tell you about Clemson, but before I get there, I'm going to say we haven't been able to talk about Oklahoma much, and I just want to wrap up your point too. I totally agree within the fact that defense wins championships, and I think while everyone praises Oklahoma's hitters, you could do it this year. There's 4 players hitting well over 400. Continually some of the best at bats. They're right behind Texas in terms of all the offensive categories in the Big 12, but it really is their defense, and I think where Oklahoma, your guys' pitching would always look so elite against, a lineup who was facing it. It was the defense, which is why not only the pitchers pitched with so much confidence, but it was so hard to be able to drop in even a dink of a hit because you have Jada Coleman, you have Riley Boone. I mean, their speed and just their ability to read ball off the bat, I think, is something that is so often overlooked and is why Oklahoma has been able to be so successful. And people keep asking me, they're saying, is Oklahoma going to win it this year? And kind of how I've been summing it up is Oklahoma doesn't have any less of a chance to win it than they have every other year. It still very well could be a 4-peat team. They have every ability to do so with every asset of the game. However, I think for the first time, we're seeing other teams that we're saying also have a very great chance that wouldn't surprise us. That feels like the difference maker.
Yeah. And since we're on the subject of Oklahoma, I will go ahead and take this podium and this platform to talk about them for a little bit because I do agree. And going into this Big 12 tournament, I honestly thought that they looked good, but they were missing something. And they came out on Thursday of the Big 12 tournament. And the number, if you look at it, the number of times that they took pitches until their first swing was so much higher this year than in the last 3 years. They were just getting deep into counts, whether they were all balls, or whether it was an unfavorable pitcher's count to the hitter. They were just taking a lot more than they typically did. And yeah, they still got good hits, but it was just more so, it looked like a mindset of I'm attacking versus letting them come to me. And on Thursday, they were attacking early in the count and they're base running extremely aggressive. That's something that they work really hard on. And that whenever a defense isn't expecting a runner to go from first to third or from second to home, whatever it is, that can create momentum, that can create rallies. And that's what I saw. But in that championship game against Texas, I mean, Reese Atwood is incredible. I think personally, I think she should be player of the year. What she's been able to do has been incredible with the consistency. That is not easy. She has been really, really incredible, but she had an opportunity to get runs on the board. There was runners on, and she just blasted one out to center field. Jada Coleman makes an incredible grab, and then the runner on second doesn't even – she's jumping behind her. The runner on second doesn't have time to tag and get to third. I mean, that's the kind of defense that you want to see. And I think we're going to see so many plays like that where it's Sports Center top 10. I'm going to be mad if half of them aren't softball this upcoming weekend. I'm going to be mad. But I am very excited to see how defense plays an impact in the tournament this year, because offense has been such a big part of the teams this year. There's been so much power, right? But I think being able to find, okay, how we know they're going to hit the ball. How can we get the advantage? Okay, we know they're going to hit some in the gaps. How can we be a step or two quicker in the gaps? I know she's going to hit this ball hard in the 5-6. How do I get myself as a shortstop, as a third baseman, to position myself there? I think the defense is going to make all the difference in the world. If I had to ask you, though, what regional, if you could go to any regional, what regional would you want to go to?
Oh, well, I have to decide, which I have to. Okay, this is like Scout's honor. I have to tell the truth here. I have
Scout's
6
honor.
different flights booked for different regionals. I prior to the selection show, I like Texas, LSU. Like when I'm telling you, I was like, you know what, I'm going to book my flights and then we're going to decide after the selection show. That is me. I don't know if that makes me crazy or smart.
Smart. Where are they booked to? So
Smart.
Texas, LSU.
I did have a Washington, was even though that also family there, so there was like that, just check the box just in case for some reason. I like I mentioned, I booked Texas when I thought potentially Northwestern could go there. I did have one Alabama because shout out, we love Gray. And then I did have travel plans to Duke as well. Trying to remember, I'm looking through my Southwest points, trying to see if there was more. I mean, I probably have more that I haven't even realized that I should go back and figure out which ones, because
you're like, wait, which ones do I actually cancel?
Which ones do I actually cancel? Because I want to be in all of them at one time.
Right.
And even just looking at it right now, I've always wanted to go to LSU. I haven't been able to go there, but with how tough some of these matchups are, I mean, maybe looking into Missouri
Mhm.
potentially. I want to go to one where things could be interesting. Tennessee, that's also going to be on my list to
Tennessee,
potentially look if I
that's
can
a
get a
fun
flight.
spot to go to. Yeah, that would be a fun spot to go to.
But
I
will I
so
cancel and rebook? How about you?
I'm gonna get to call a regional. I don't know which one, so I'll find out Monday morning. They'll let me know and they'll say you are going here. So I have no idea where I'm going. If I had to pick, this is hard. I asked you the question thinking that like it would buy me time so I could decide. So I made you go first, and then I'm scrambling. I'm looking. I think Tennessee would be such a fun one to go to. Um,
I'm narrowing mine down. I'm saying I'm either going to be at Texas, I'm going to be at Tennessee, or I'm going to be at LSU. So follow me
okay,
down
I
below
like that.
and see where I end up. And you know what, Nicole, I might even wait to see where you go because we'll see.
Yeah, I would love to go to UCLA. I would love to go to Tennessee. I think the Arkansas one will be really interesting with Arizona and Arkansas. Like I feel like they're pretty evenly matched. Um, I think I'll go two more. I'll give a top five. There's 16 places to go, right? I'll give a top five. I know.
Your chances have to be good to get
That,
sent to one of them.
yeah, I know I'm never going to get sent to an Oklahoma regional, so I won't include that. Obviously, if I could call it, I absolutely would want to. Um, but I think I'm going to go. Oh, there was one that I was looking at earlier. I think Louisiana is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one. And then, did I say Missouri already? I might
You
not
did
have,
not.
but
I
if
think
I
I said
didn't,
Missouri.
yeah, I think Missouri would be a really fun one to go to. But yeah, tweet at us, tweet at Supple America, tweet at Sid, tweet at me, shoot some DMs. I'm so curious. Like, if you could go to any regional, which ones would you guys want to go to? We're gonna have to wrap up because Tara's catching flights. Um, but this was fun. I enjoyed this a lot. This was fun.
I I think I can safely say see you again next year. See all of you again next
See
year.
you again maybe this weekend.
That as well. Maybe we need a debrief after every regional because as you saw, these matchups
Oh
are
my gosh.
going to be crazy. I think we're manifesting that. So check back
We're
in.
putting
We might be back soon. But between Nicole and I and Softball America, we will be covering as much softball as we possibly can through regionals, through super regionals, and then obviously we're all together at the Women's College World Series. Thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of Nicole Mendes, myself, Sydney Supple, Tara Henry, who is the woman behind all of the magic that happens here at Softball America, the rest of our crew, thank you so much. I mean, it is softball in May, so it's absolute mayhem, and we love it. But have a great rest of your night, and we will see you again shortly.